We are live. We are the Tendys on Pattison. We are here back to our normal show days and normal show time, talking about all that action that didn't happen in Flyers World.
Yeah, nothing happened at all. They only completely revamped their whole D, changed the leadership core, added a backup goalie. So pretty much everything. I can't believe it. I mean, we were told that it wasn't going to happen.
So, I mean, we can run down. I think that I don't know that running down, just running it down makes much sense. So let's start with Ryan Ellis.
Yep.
Right. Let's start there.
So last year, your first pair was Provorov and Random. Initially, it was supposed to be Ghost, then potentially Gustafson, but then eventually it turned into Braun. So now you're basically your number 2 defenseman last year is your 6th. Ellis is a gigantic improvement above everyone that I just listed, and then it's just it's a huge improvement. They have a legit first pair now.
Ellis comes in, pretty good shot from the right-handed side, can run quarterback on the power play, but also a legitimate two-way defenseman.
Yep. He's not the big physical guy, but he's just a smart hockey player. He's a tenacious player, and the theme of this offseason is locker room. He's a good locker room guy too. I think he's going to be a fan favorite.
Yeah, I think so. I think that he just brings normally what this city likes, right?
Yeah.
Good work ethic, outplays his size. Yeah, red hair. Well, that's the Flyers, right? They send Voracek out. They have to keep that quota correct.
Yep. And he's a puck mover too. I mean, he's not like he's not Cale Makar, obviously, but he moves the puck up and makes smart decisions with it, and he's just a very good defenseman. I would say he was a top 5 right-handed D in the league the last 4 or 5 years. Granted, the last couple of years, especially last year, he was very beat up. But take that out of the equation, he was one of the best right-handed D.
And the worry was that he had this lingering shoulder injury, which he says was a knuckle. Wasn't his shoulder at all.
Yeah, which I get. Some teams have a habit of lying. I'm sure the Flyers. We know the Flyers have done it in the past. Every team has.
No.
Yeah, no lying here. But yeah, I mean, I'm not concerned. It's not like he has lingering concussion issues where every year he's getting dinged. So I'm not concerned about that.
So then they may move Goss to spare for cap relief.
Yeah, and it again the cost of everything. It's the price of doing business. The 7th rounder is what it is. Yeah, sure, the 2nd rounder hurts, but again, it's next year's 2nd rounder, so you're probably talking if the 25% chance of them making the NHL would happen, it would take place in the next 5 years. So we basically gave away a guy for 2027. So
I'm okay by the time that turns around, nobody's going to care. I mean,
nope. And like we talked about, as long as Risto plays well on the ice, it's a moot point. No one's going to care.
So I think that I closed off our last episode saying something about bringing Ristolainen in as a name, and I'm not going to call myself Griff Stradamus here, but we knew that they wanted to get a little bit more physical on the defensive side. Yep,
and he's going to make boneheaded plays with the puck. That's going to happen. There's going to be times where he tries to do too much, but for the most part, he's going to be the physical presence that they've been missing, especially in the back end, some nastiness. And I gotta try to find the quote. He was on a podcast.
It was on Flyers Daily.
Was it on Flyers Daily? Oh,
Yeah, with Jason
with
Martinez.
yes.
So while you're digging, I'll fill in a little bit. So obviously he's had 4 seasons where he's had over 40 points. So the idea that he's just going to be a big physical presence, he brings a little bit more than just that. Additionally, he formerly wore an assistant's captain on his sweater. The big knock on him was that he underperformed his draft stock and maybe underperformed what Buffalo wanted from him, which was top pair, fully defensive presence, and maybe not necessarily. Maybe the ask was too big, but also when you have a franchise that's constantly in flux. New coach about every other season, new GM every 2 years or so. It's kind of hard to get your footing going.
Yeah, no, I can't find the quote. But basically, he said he wants to be a prick on the ice, and he wants every team to hate him, which will come in short order. And as much as the fans have exploded with hatred towards this trade. And the pessimism, once he lays out a Penguin or a Ranger, it's that's going to be forgiven. But he's going to take he's going to take some penalties, and it's but it's all part of it.
He said that he wants to be basically a piece of shit. Like that's one of his quotes. What do we think of the new look defense? I think both of us are looking forward to it. I think we have some positive feelings.
I'm ecstatic.
But basically, here's the thing: is I think Paul last season, especially going into the season, you and I were pretty high on Phil Myers. And we like the player. We think that there's a high ceiling for him, especially considering him being an undrafted player. But the reality is like for his size, he's not the most physical guy. At least, he might mature into that body or mature into that role.
And people want to talk about hockey dumb. I mean, how many times did he get caught stepping on a play for no reason at all, staying at the blue line, and it greatly affected Sanheim. In terms of the deed as it stands right now, and we haven't even talked about Yandle, goes a long way to helping Carter Hart, especially, Risto especially. They did not clear the net at all last year, and that really hurt Carter. He'd make a save, and, even if he gave up a bit of an iffy rebound, he never got any help, and that's going to change this year. I can't wait for it. We're 2 months away, but it's going to be a long 2 months.
I also think that it's tough to understate how much bringing a personality that brings physicality in helps not just the goaltender, but helps the other players. So when they get the score run up on them and Lindblom has to be the guy to drop the gloves, it's not a good look. It's not a good look. And when you have a guy like Ristolainen who teams know, how much you might think of his talent or think that they overpaid or think that he stinks. I tend to disagree, but it's fair when you look at the numbers alone to say that you have concerns. But bringing that kind of thing where teams know if they do something, they're going to have to pay, it changes the dynamic for the other players.
If Risto was in that game last year, the 9-0 shellacking, or did they break the shutout? I don't remember. It doesn't matter. Risto would have hit someone from behind, head first into the boards, done something to get some sort of emotion. He would have been pissed, and he would have killed someone, and that's something that's been missing from this team.
So after Ristolainen, they bring in free agent Keith Yandle. Now here's the thing with Yandle's contract. When it's under $1.25 million, they have freedom.
Yep.
Um,
It does not block anyone permanently.
No, and it's a low risk, high reward signing. That's my feeling. Is if it doesn't work, whatever. You're in the same boat.
Yep.
If it does, and he can play your second power play unit,
I have a sneaky feeling he's going to be running the top unit.
So you think Yans will be on the top unit and Ellis will be on the second unit?
Yeah, I mean, I
had them reversed.
I hope they change it up when it doesn't work. Change it up. There's no harm in it. Have two units. They have more than enough talent up front and now in the back end. And I think besides the 5-on-5, and everyone wants to talk about pairings, what this decor does for you is it greatly improves your special teams. You now have, I mean, even though he has not been good at it, Provorov can still run a power play. Risto ran a power play in Buffalo, and if you look back at the last couple of years in Buffalo, it was one of the few things that wasn't terrible. And
I think people don't realize how good of a point getter Ristolainen has been. I know I mentioned the 4 years of 40+ points, but 4 years of 40+ points. And
Yandle 2 years ago in the 1920, he had 32 power play assists. That's awesome. And last year he had in limited duties, he had 17 power play assists. So that right there, I mean, in a 56 game season now, they ended up going away from him, but I think that was just them trying to give younger guys a shot. And he's not the best defensively, but him and Braun being on a third pair is ideal. I mean, they're both veterans. Yandle moves the puck. Braun is just a good defenseman. And then when you get out of the power play, your penalty kill. So on the power play, you have legitimately 4D, potentially 5 because you have Sanheim too. That if need be can run a power play. That's significant. And then on the penalty kill, I mean, you don't you get Provorov's going to play a ton. Braun's going to play a ton. Ellis, I mean, maybe you save him from that because you have Provorov, Risto, Braun, and Sanheim. But yeah, Ellis is going to play too. But he doesn't have to be out there for the first shot, whatever. They can spread it around. Is my point. Like your guys, you have at least 4D that can play on all in all situations.
So the next thing you brought up special teams, so I think that it naturally segues into the next move, which is you move Voracek for Cam Atkinson.
Yep. Love this deal. As much as I hated on Jake last year, he is 10th in Flyers scoring in points in Flyers history. He was a good Flyer. I think the end of his career, I mean, it was just time. But and he was obviously one of the disgruntled members of the team. And by the way, I think Phil Myers was probably one of them too, because at the end of the year, he was not happy with the way he was being used, and AV made it evident that he was not happy with Myers either. So there was a lot of guys that were cranky, put it that way. They were cranky hockey players, and the locker room just was not good. So this, Atkinson comes in. He was Mr. Columbus. He was Mr. Blue Jacket. Bit of a head scratcher why they dealt him, but what they did, and the Flyers are going to benefit from him.
I'll give you my hypothesis on that move. So on the Columbus side, I think that a guy like Jake, a true setup guy, they're trying to show Line A they want to get him pieces to make him better.
True.
And I think that when it comes to Jake and here, yes, a ton of points. But the Flyers, makeup-wise, they're fit. They have a ton of playmakers. Like when you break down styles of play, they have a ton of playmakers.
Not a lot.
First. Yep. Too many guys looking for the assist. Not enough guys looking for the shot. So I think on both ends, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, obviously, Atkinson is not going to make up for Jake's assists, right? Like, that's just not going to happen. But what he'll make up for it is probably a better goals against differential, right? Like you expect the penalty kill to be better with a Cam Atkinson on it.
Since 2014, he's second in NHL to Marchand in shorthanded goals.
Yeah, you expect
he's grittier and harder to play against.
Right, like they had to slot Nolan Patrick in the penalty kill, a guy that was just having a bad year. Like that's how bad they were looking for bodies to kill penalties, and how bad the unit as a whole was doing. We know, we lived through it, right? Like we know the penalty kill unit.
Now they have a lot.
Now they have a much revamped special teams. Should be better on both sides of special teams.
I mean, the penalty kill, they'd be hard pressed to get worse. The 73%. If they're not at least 82%, someone's got to lose. Someone's head's got to roll.
So, and then you also get on the even strength or power play side. Atkinson's a shoot first guy. Is he like a sniper? Like Ryan's asking, like not about him, but are they looking for a sniper? No, he's not a sniper per se. But he is a shoot guy. He is not a setup guy. I think pairing him, I doubt. I mean, I'd be hard pressed. Has he played with a setup guy or a pass guy like Giroux in his career?
I don't think. Where has he played with him? I mean, I don't. Maybe Duchesne and Panarin. I mean, I'm trying
Panarin's Panarin.
That was Columbus's top line, wasn't it? It was Duchesne centered Panarin and Atkinson. So, Panarin's a sniper, but he's
everything
too. He's everything. He's a complete player.
You don't get like the best nickname in hockey by not being great, Yeah.
So I think what's going to happen, I think you're going to have him with Hayes, mainly because they know each other from Boston. They played with each other in BC, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, yes. Atkinson is 2 or 3 years Hayes senior. Yeah. So I think it was more like Hayes' freshman year was Atkinson's senior year, something like that.
Yeah. So I can definitely see the two of them together, because I think they're probably going to leave Couturier with G and TK. At least that's where I would go. And then
Hayes, Farabee, and Atkinson.
That would be my guess, and put Farabee on the right wall, and then put Atkinson on the left wall.
And then third line, you'd be looking at what, Lotz?
Well, see, I mean, it's going to be I think initially penciled, and that's a really light pencil. I think they have Lawton as the third center, and then
with JVR
and who am I missing?
Oscar or Thompson. Is Thompson going to play center?
Thompson's going to be your
fourth line.
Seed. He'll be your 13th forward. How am I missing this? I'm like
Frost.
Yeah. Hold on. I don't know why we're even.
I mean, like I would. That's if Frost is healthy. Like I'd like to put him with Lotz and Van Riemsdyk, because again, as a setup guy, that's not bad. Like that's Frost is a playmate, pass first guy too. He's very creative, but that's what he is. So like that's who I'd want him with, is at least one goal scorer in his young career.
Yeah, no, I would agree. So just looking at the roster, I'd probably say Oscar for right now. But if Frost is going to be on the team, you're going to want Frost centering JVR and
put Lotz on the wing.
Yeah, and that way, like you have two centers out there, which is ideal. And then your fourth line would be Thompson. It's going to be a combination of Albe Kubel should be a lock on the fourth line, and then it's going to be
put Wade Allison.
Well, Wade Allison's a possibility. They still have to sign him, don't they? He's an RFA next year. So Wade Allison's a possibility. He's a possibility for the third line too. But you have Tanner Lazinski as another forward as well. So I don't think like they're not going out and getting a sniper. I mean, they don't have the cap room, first of all, and second of all,
they'd have to move Van Riemsdyk. Like that's the only.
You'd
way.
have to, and you're not going to give up any more draft picks to move a salary. There's just no point to it.
Well, and you're running out of lower end draft picks to do it. 1, 2. I mean, how do we know how much longer is Van Riemsdyk doesn't have that much term left anyway, right?
He's got this year. He has this upcoming season, the season after. And if he's productive again,
why? Yeah, why?
Like, well, not. I mean, you shouldn't have to give him away. Like,
yeah,
I don't see why you'd have to give him away. Like last year, he had 17 and 26 for 43 points in 56 games. The year before that, he had 19 and 21 for 40 points in 66 games. The year before that, he had 27 goals, 21 assists for 48 points and 66. Like he's right around, half of, like 3/4 of a point a game. So I don't.
He's not vastly he's getting paid a lot, but he's not vastly underperforming his contract.
No, he's ugly. It's ugly hockey. And not ugly as in terms of he gets dirty. It's just slow, methodical, get in front. Like his hands are really good, but he skates like a rusty sled.
Yeah, but third line, bottom 6, it shouldn't be hurting you. If
they can move him, great. I think that's something that happens at the trade deadline or in the next offseason, because then you only have one more year left. Because next offseason we have some contracts to sign: Coots, Farabee, Giroux.
Like Coots, elevation in salary, Giroux, deflation in salary, most likely.
It's still going to be an increase, I would think. So Giroux's at 8.25, Coots is at 4.3. My guess is Coots is at like 9, and Giroux is at like 7. Giroux is at like 6.5.
Yeah, 6.5. Yeah.
So that means you go from 4.3 and 8.2. So that's
12.5 to 13.
So you're probably upping it by $3 or $4 million.
So it has to come from somewhere.
And next year, I'm pretty confident you can probably deal JVR. And if you get the opportunity, if he starts producing, but it's tough. Like last year, like he was one of the few guys who was producing. If you would have taken him out of the lineup, like I don't know, the season would have been even worse.
Yeah, but I wonder though. Like we won't know. Like he was producing. You don't know if anybody who was like going towards the playoffs kicked the tires. Like you just don't know what the interest it was. If there was to be interest, last year would have been a good year for there to be interest.
Yeah,
because he was playing well.
Yep. No, we'll see what happens. But I mean, still, they need young guys to play on the fourth line. So to answer Ryan's question, the only move that I could see them is another Nate Thompson-esque player. Maybe that plays a slightly different role. Maybe
it's going to have to be $1 million, 1.2 million or like less than 1.2 million. There's not going to be much left once they get these offers to Sanheim and Hart.
Yeah, because as it stands right now, they have a hair over $8 million in space, and my guess is Hart and Sanheim take up 7 of that,
right? Maybe
7.5. So like you're gonna be up against it cap wise, but there's also guys that aren't gonna like Jackson Cates. He's on ELC. He can go down, which that'll free up another $1 million. So you might have $1.5 million of room.
But it might actually make sense when it's that low. It actually might make sense to carry that into the season, because when it comes to trade deadline time, if you want to add somebody, those dollars are actually worth more.
Yeah, and you want you bank cap space daily, so you want to keep banking that every single day. So the more days you can have, the more space, the better off you are.
So I just don't think it's in the cards unless there's another, unforeseen trade, which they might be at the end of their abilities to do that. Again, unless they were going to part with next year's first and a player, or
No,
some
no, I mean,
prospects.
we don't know. There's teams that are desperate. I mean, I'm sure there's teams we don't know what's going to happen with Eichel, and
Yeah, but that's probably going to be expensive, like pretty expensive.
yeah, but if there's two teams waiting it out to see what happens, you don't know what else could possibly pop up. But I mean, besides JVR, who else are you trading? You're not trading any of the D because you just acquired half of them. G's not going anywhere. Hayes ain't going anywhere. Atkinson, you just picked up. Konechny, I don't think you're moving. Coots, you're not moving. Lawton, you just signed. Lindblom, you're not moving. Aube Kubel, why? Farabee, you're not moving. Morgan Frost is the only one. But again, it would have to be a no-brainer in my eyes.
Well, and you've got prospect talent, right? Like they do have some guys that maybe, Forster had a decent year in Lehigh last year. They do have some names, but they can't go back to trading the prospects away for.
And that's been the important part of this whole process. Everything Chuck has done, he has not dealt any of their top prospects. The only guys I guess maybe you consider a prospect would be Patrick and Myers, but they're NHL players now. They're not prospects. So he didn't trade any Wade Allisons or I'm blanking
Tanner Lazinski
or Lazinski or Zamula and obviously Cam
York or Forster
Forster, Say Wisdom.
Yeah, or Frost. So
Frost, yep.
Those players are going to be when teams are looking to get rid of a star player, it's going to take 3 of those prospects and then some. So you got to make sure when you're going to do that, one is that you can afford it, but also that you're not trading away, multiple years for a 1 to 2 year rental.
Yep. Yeah, and especially because contracts are coming up, you need those young players on their entry level deals or even their first deal that's cheap to take a semi important role because you need cheap players when you have higher paid players. The important thing is, and it'll change next year with Coots getting his deal. You don't have anyone making stupid money, and I consider anything over 9.5 stupid money.
It's very hard for a player to live up, no matter how great they are, to live up to that level because of what it does to the rest of your roster.
Yep.
So even McCarr got it right. McCarr just signed for 9.
Yep. But with him in 2 years, it's going to look like a steal.
Depending on what happens, when the cap finally raises, it's going to look fine. He deserves. That's one of the few players that deserves it. But even so, it does hamstring you. Those $9 and $10 million contracts do, regardless of how good the player is, you still have to have 5 other. In McCarr's case, you do have to have 5 other defensemen, and you gotta. In a case like that, when you've got a couple of those, like a Toronto, right, who's got a couple big contracts, you've got to hit your draft picks because you need guys playing for cheap down the roster.
Yeah.
To your point, right?
And I mean, I guess the one surprising thing to me, and I'm looking at this because he's not exactly a direct comparison, but a guy like I'm looking at him right now and I can't think of his name. Landeskog. He signed 8 years, $7 million. Comparable. He's point total wise, he's comparable to Coots, and he's a year younger than Coots. So you wonder if maybe they can talk Coots into, being
Sometimes
something
the market,
being
sometimes
something
the market's
similar to
set,
that.
right? Like that's when they talk about free agency and not wanting to set the market. You look at a comparable player and you can use that as a framework.
Yeah, because
The-
his previous deal that just ended, he was making 5.5, and that
The
was
o-
a 7-year deal.
the only thing with Landeskog, though, what I will say is they have the bonus of saying we are a contender. Like so sometimes players take a discount, like a hometown discount, but also a discount to play for. When you have a Nathan McKinnon in his prime and a Cal McCarr on the back end, you might take less to say that I know I've got two superstars, not just stars, but superstars on this roster. I'm going to take a little less.
It also made Chuck's job all that more important to revamp the roster this year, because if you didn't, you just stood pat and have another mediocre season. Like, why does he want to sign here? You have to
Yeah,
keep him wanting to be here.
but it's another like what he said as well. I can't keep coming back with the same players and expect different results, right?
Yep.
Like that's really the long and short of it. He said at the end of the season, "This is unacceptable." He came out and showed that it was unacceptable. There was no other option, right? So this is why we were pretty confident a couple weeks ago when we took a 2-week break, saying we expect big changes. All signs pointed to expect big changes. Did we expect it to shake the way it did? Well, I don't think these were the names we expected to end up being here. But when you say this is unacceptable, and then I agree with you, I think that there were players that were not happy with Vigneault, and Chuck said, "I'm not moving the coach."
Yep. Yeah, you got to hold up your end of the bargain, and clearly last year the players did not, and there were varying reasons for that, as we discussed constantly last season. But you have to pull your weight, and a lot of those guys have been here, and it was time. So we talked about G wasn't moving, and the whole letter thing. All these guys have been, alternate captains. So it's just the locker room is just going to be. It's just going to be a whole heck of a lot better, and probably the happiest guy is Hayes, because he's got two of his Boston guys with him. His best friend in Yandle. So hopefully, and especially once he's healthy, we'll get happy Hayes back.
Well, Yandle thrived under AV's
Maybe
system as
too.
well.
Yep.
Now obviously he's older now, right? Like you can't, time comes for us all, but he knows the system. He's played well in the system. So that's a bonus, right? Additionally, apparently he was part of recruiting and talking to Atkinson and to Yandle about buying into coming here. Those are two things, but I think that the one thing I will say the one thing I like about the Risto trade is if it doesn't work, if the analytics people are right, you cut bait. Yeah, it cost you a first round pick.
That'll look real bad. If
Yeah,
that
but
if that doesn't work and they don't sign him, that'll look really, really bad. And
it's
that's the thing. They can't sign him in the offseason. They have to wait and see if their gamble was worth it. Because what will look worse than him not playing well is them extending him to big money and then him not playing well. So yeah, but that'd be really bad if they. That'd
It
be
would
really
be, but
bad.
it cost you a first round pick in a draft that nobody really was that high on. So yes, but I'd rather get a player that's risky and not be stuck with a bad contract, than get a player who's risky who now I'm stuck with for 3 years that's not movable.
And
That everybody
for the record, because everyone freaking out that Chuck was an idiot when that trade came down, there were 6 other teams that wanted Risto, wanted to trade for him, and they were willing to deal their first round picks, but they were not inside the top 20. They were not trading. They were not going to take a first round if it was inside the top 20. That means the other 6 teams were playoff teams. So if Chuck is an idiot, he's not the only idiot. in
There's
believing
only
that
but
Risto will regroup, will regroup
let's
rather.
analytics. I have my own opinion on. I think that there's good things about them. I think that they're limited. They're numbers trying to explain a fast moving game. But put the analytics aside, depending on how you feel about it. But like the reality is like a top 4 right-handed defenseman, they don't come a dime a dozen. They're hard to find. One that skates halfway decent, with a hard shot. They're
And
not,
edge.
and good edge work. They don't come around all the time. They're not, like these guys are treated like unicorns for a reason. They're not that common. So even if he's not that good, there are so few that the league has said there's value. And like we have to live in reality when it comes to some of this. There's just not that many top 4, 6'4" right-handed defensemen.
Yep. Yeah, and those guys will always be given an extra chance to prove themselves, and that's just the way it is. And it's funny if you think about it. It makes me think of Char a little bit because when he was on Long Island, they thought a lot of the league was like, "Wow, this guy's a joke. He can't move. He can't do anything." Now it's obviously there's differences, but he was thought to be a joke, and he worked his ass off, and he became one of the best defensemen in the league for a long while. And you can't judge a guy on his first stop just because you have to believe that a young person can make themselves better. And Risto is what, 24? He's 26.
Even so, I think people don't realize that he's been playing in the league so long. Like, again, does not point well to the organization when you're bringing a defenseman in that young.
Nope.
And giving him that many minutes that young.
And guess what? How highly touted was Rasmus Dahlin.
Number 1 pick.
He's so good. His skill set is off the charts. But even him, teams of fans have been questioning him because he was thrown to the wolves. That's been my concern with Cam York since this whole time. Like, granted, he wasn't a first overall pick or top 3 or anything like that, but like they need time to develop. And when you rush them and you give them too much too soon, it can stunt their growth and greatly affect them. And with Risto, he was never put in a position to succeed. He never had any legitimate support around him. So, yeah, combine that with he's not going to be an analytics defenseman. Same thing with Seth Jones. There's analytics people saying that he sucks too, which is ridiculous. But, they're going to have their opinion.
It's just they're limited. I think that we have gotten to a point where, like, we try to use analytics to explain something that, like, numbers have biases too, even if we don't, and formulas. Sometimes we don't realize what they are until we start to see who gets graded out as high and if they really impact the game we think they do. And one of my favorite ways to explain this and not knowing bias, and if you're not a basketball fan, I get it. This is a hockey show. But Basketball Advanced Analytics shows that Rudy Gobert is the best defender in the league. He's a back to the basket defender. It's something the league, and when they give out contracts, does not say is valuable. Someone who can defend every position is, but somehow this guy, the formula favors a player like that. So when you're looking at it, we don't always know what answers formulas solve. And we don't always know what they, we think that they show, but they're going to have a bias. So when we get locked into this, the analytics show this player is better. I don't know that analytics can tell us that, because a sport, baseball, maybe a little bit more because it's, pitch, stop, pitch. And it's a lot less of microsecond other than when you start your swing, lot less microsecond adjustments.
Yep.
and you can't firmly rule out just what your eyes see or tell you don't believe your lying eyes, believe these numbers.
Yeah, without a doubt. There's a place for it. It's just another way of helping diagnose a player. But I think at the end of the day, the eye test has to overrule it in my eyes. No pun intended.
But you have to use both, and maybe you're using the numbers to compare two close players, but like even then you're yourself going to have a bias. So let's see what happens. And as far as I'm concerned, Myers did not have a very good season last season, so Risto wouldn't have to be that good to be an upgrade of what we had last season playing second pair days.
Ellis, Risto, and Yandle don't have to do very much to be better than their counterparts were last year. And I think just them being there and being better is going to make 9, 6, and 61 that much better.
And 79.
And 79, yes. the
most important,
forgotten, most important player on the team.
And that's when you have a young goaltender who's going to be on a bridge deal, right? He's going to, if his play gets back to pre-bubble 2019, which you and I think would expect it to, he's going to be himself due a big payday.
Yep.
Right. This is the time that you put it together to get the wins before you have to pay that man a lot of money.
Yep.
And that seems to be just like teams do with quarterbacks now in the NFL. That seems to be the formula of what you do with your goaltenders in the NHL is you try to build to win while you're in that bridge deal, or if you're lucky enough, maybe a year before.
Yep.
Because when you're paying your goaltender $8, it's more difficult to build a full team.
Yeah. You look at it like the Rangers were never able to win with Lundqvist being, at his cheapest. And then as he got older and better, his cap hit went up, and that affected how good of a team you could put around him. And at the end of the day, it's about drafting and developing. Now, I know it's a catch-22 because we talked about giving up picks, but we're in a win now mode, and you have your prospects that are going to help you in the immediate future. You're not going to be getting any generational talents at where they're going to be picking. I mean, they were terrible last year, and they were 13th. So,
and
14th, but Arizona.
Yeah, but also the idea is like it's not necessarily just your picks, right? They trade away a second, they trade away a first, but the reality is like they haven't really traded prospects.
Nope.
And they've kept, for the most part, other than this Risto trade, their first round picks, and we'll see what happens next year. So, like, the idea is that you do have players in the pipeline. Your first round pick might not even be in your pipeline for another 2 years, depending on where they are in their development. So the idea is when you have your goaltender, especially on a cheaper deal, you have to decide, do I want to win now?
Yep.
And that's really the long and short of it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying they have to win a cup, but you have to get to where like Boston has been, where they've been very, very good. And you want to make that helps players buy in, like Colorado, because they haven't won, but they're right on the cusp. If you're right on the cusp, players will take a little less to stay,
or to come.
Some players will. So and that's as long as they're being taken care of, that's the important thing. So you just got to get there. Now I think we should talk about the other half of the goaltending picture.
The last one we haven't discussed.
Flyers signed Martin Jones, 1 year, $2 million. He's been bad the last 3 years. San Jose
As
has
has
been,
SJ, yeah, right.
yeah.
Like,
Oh, I mean, last 2 years. I mean, the 3 years ago they made the conference finals, and Jones wasn't awesome, but in the playoffs he was actually pretty good. I don't have his numbers up in front of me when I'll bring them up, but I mean, obviously we talked about. Well, I know I did, and we all agreed on it, but I wanted Jonathan Bernier, but he got $4 million a year, and Flyers couldn't pay that even if they wanted to, and that's too much to pay. Then Halak went to Vancouver, and you really weren't left with much else. I'm not a big fan of, like, Freddie Anderson was too much.
Kemper.
Well, Kemper was signed. He
got traded, right?
He got traded to Colorado because Colorado let Grubauer walk, who went to Seattle. So I don't. There wasn't a lot of your other option was Holtby at the same price, in which Holtby was awful last year. That being said, I mean, his track record before last year was a lot better than Jones. So 3 years ago, he started This is Jones. He started 62 games. He had a goals against 2.94, save percentage 8.96. In the playoffs, he had 20 games played. If I remember right, he won. Six. He won 9 playoff games. He had 302 with an 8.98, which is not good. So if you look at his consolidated numbers, he's at like an 8.96 the last 3 years, because that's exactly his. He's had the same exact save percentage the last 3 seasons, which is kind of crazy. His goals against has gone up. So it's a little concerning there. I mean, that the Flyers are gambling on the goalie coach Kim Dillabaugh working and fixing his game, because Coach Kim was in LA with Martin Jones when Jones was a young buck, and I think both of them think that they can fix him, which, I mean, he's not going to be getting the lion's share of the games. That's one thing. There's going to be a lot less pressure on him. That's 2. He's going to have a better team in front of him. That's 3. Also, when you look at it, 2 years ago, would any of us have said in 1920 that the Flyers' goaltending was an issue?
2 years ago, no.
Okay. Elliott's numbers 2 years ago were, he had a save percentage that was like 8.98. Now,
well, Hart was so good 2 years ago, though. Right?
Yes, Hart was so good at home. So, which I think that's a little overblown, but whatever. You still want him to, if Jones can have a goals against at like 2.65 and a save percentage of 9.05, perfectly fine. That's exactly what they need. A guy that can give you 30 to 40 games. So
I think he's going to be more towards the 30 than the 40. Like, I think that if they got Bernier, I think that you do hope, because that, would mean Hart's playing well. But I think if they got Bernier or one of the other names, then you would have seen more like the 40. I think that he's going to be on the lower end. We'll see. I mean, that's predicated on Hart getting back to 2019, 2020, not 2020, 2021 numbers. We'll see. I mean, I think that this is, again, a similar gamble to Risto a little bit, where you're seeing a guy who underperformed recently, and you're hoping that a better situation will improve.
Yeah, and it's a gamble. It's 1 year, which the fact that he only got 1 year shows you that Chuck was like, I'm not sold on it, but it's what's out there. So, and also
he's been really bad.
Well, I mean,
in Vancouver, right? I mean,
that was just last year. Hold on.
Has he been good separated from Trotz?
Not. I mean, his numbers declined year after year. Hold on,
But what about like before Trotz got into Washington?
He was really good.
Okay.
So this is Hopi's numbers last year. 3.67 with an 8.89 save percentage, which is brutal. The year before, he was 8.97 with a 3.11 in Washington. That's literally the same as Jones. The year before that, the year after they won the Cup, he was 9.11, 2.82. And ironically, his regular season, the year they won the Cup, was not good. He had a 9.07 with a 2.99. So his numbers in 18-19 were better than 17-18, but it was his playoff numbers because he had a 9.22 at a 2.16 in the playoffs in 2018.
Pretty good.
So
just okay, right?
Yeah, just
92% save percentage. Yeah.
So I mean, like, you can't sit there and say Hopi was definitively better because he was atrocious last season. Jones wasn't quite as bad, but not good either. So if you want to go over the last 2 years, Jones might actually be better in his numbers with a worse team, no less.
Yeah. So I guess that's my point is, like, given what your choices were when those other players got signed, which was basically Hopi and Jones, I think Jones was the better signing.
Yeah, because
we'll see if it.
Because like Reimer, he doesn't do anything for me. And then you see your other options were Craig Anderson, Carter Hutton, meh. I mean, I know
Carter Hutton enough.
Oh God, yeah. And people talked about Linus Allmark, but he wanted a chance to start. And I mean, Boston did a good job signing him up because they need a starting goalie till Tuukka gets back. Since it's going to be Allmark and Swayman for the first half of the season, which Swayman was really good last season. Granted, small sample size, but he looks like he's going to be a really good goalie. So, like Allmark wanted a chance to start. The Flyers weren't looking for a guy to literally compete with Hart. They wanted a guy to complement Hart and push Hart, but not try to actually take his job. So,
I think your hand was tied. The hands were tied here with how the market broke down and what you were looking for.
And by the way, one thing people have to understand is the player has to want to sign here too. Like, you can't just, this isn't pre-cap where you can just throw as much money as you want. If this was pre-cap,
throw that
if this
big
was
Dick Flyers money around, yeah,
Bernier
would have Eichel, and it'd have Eichel already.
Yeah, yep. But like
that deal would have been done.
There would have been no issues. They wouldn't have been trading anyone. They would have signed Dougie Hamilton. They would have, gotten this guy or that guy. So I think Chuck, I give him an A, not an A plus.
Look,
an A.
Look, you have to make what moves are in front of you with the roster you have. It's not like they can manufacture players out of thin air in order to give to other teams to get better. You're trading with other people who are trying to retain their own jobs. So you're not going to trade them garbage for their best player, no matter how much people think that works in fantasy sports. And the defensive unit wasn't good enough. It is very different. They have a legitimate first line D, which they did not have last year.
Nope.
They have a second pairing, which should be good. They are a big second line. Just in size, but also those two big guys can move. This isn't getting Darian Hatcher when the league's changing. Like
Jason Smith and Mike Ratchie.
Right. These are two big guys who can skate, and we saw come playoff time, you need big defensemen. This was probably the only big defenseman who was available. Hamilton's not a big defender.
Yandle's not small.
But what I mean is, like, Seth Jones is not a big defenseman.
Yeah.
Right, he's more in like the 6'1" category.
Yeah, it's just you want to at least be 6'1" and up.
6'1" is still, though, I feel like on the average size, not the big size.
Yeah, but I wouldn't. I mean, we're just splitting hairs.
I'm not going to say small, but they're not. They're not the Shea Webbers. They're not the big defensemen that do well in the playoffs.
And to be clear, we're not talking about they have to be big and physical. You need length. You need to be able to outreach someone, just out human them. So I just reach the puck that they can't.
Yeah, and good sweep and poke check. Like there's just sometimes when you're bigger and you have that reach, that angle to the corner is different. Like there is just, it changes dynamics that you don't realize it does until you see the difference, in the attack points.
And by Risto being physical, it's going to make Sanheim more confident. It's going to give him more freedom and flexibility to take it and rush with it and go with it, which is he couldn't do it last year, and even the year before when him and Myers were a good pair, he still had a rookie defenseman on his as a partner. Like he was still hamstrung a little bit of what he could do. So hopefully we start to see 18-19 Sanheim, because 18-19 Sanheim was probably their best defenseman.
He was very good.
Provorov, picked up towards the last half of after the coaching change, but Sanheim was their best defenseman by far.
So I think that we covered all the moves, all the new look fly guys.
82-0.
Yeah, 82-0. Like otherwise, you have a new assistant coach.
Yeah.
Lappy, who we didn't want in charge of specialty or part of special teams anymore, goes to Allentown.
Yep.
So I think that special teams is, might go from a black eye to one that's healing a little bit.
Yeah. No, I think the power play should be in the top 10 next season, and the penalty kill, I expect both of them to be in the top 10 next year.
Well, there you go. We don't have a long way to go before
2 months
preseason starts.
Well,
it's basically August.
The
end of this week is August, and preseason starts in September. We've got basically 1 month off.
October 15th is the home opener, I think, or it is the opener. So 31, I'm just counting the days, 61, 76. So basically we have like 78 days.
Until regular season hockey.
Until it matters.
There you go. 79 days, less than 100.
Yep. Under 3 months, baby.
So we are the Tendys on Pattison. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to overlay the Philly Sports Alliance show schedule. I can't bounce off from wrong one. I can't bounce off from Chris when or where the Diamond Club is this week. But
they're gonna have a lot to talk about because the Phillies just came back from 7-0, tied in the bottom of the 7th or the 6th, whatever. Then the Nats went ahead, and then Brad Miller just hit a walk-off grand slam.
Oh wow! There you go. So later tonight, you got tables, ladders, and chairs. Obviously, that is a wrestling show. Come Monday, you have the football smack talk show, which is on at 6. Diamond Club at 6:30, competing with each other. Tuesday is the Philly broadcast. That is a 4-for-4 show. That's at 6:30. Wednesday, 6 p.m. That was yesterday. If you guys didn't check it out, Bald Eagle show. He does some beer reviews during that show. So if you're into beer, check out the Bald Eagle. Wednesday is Mike Sports. That's Wednesdays at 8 p.m. And then we are here Thursdays at 5:30. Tendys on Pattison, where we talk Flyers hockey. That is the Philly Sports Alliance show rundown. You can catch us on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope/Twitter, Twitch, wherever you want to watch your live broadcasts. Otherwise, guys, we will be back next Thursday at 5:30.